A perfect escape. The Miami sun poured golden warmth over the shimmering hotel pool, casting sparkles on the water's surface. It was the kind of day Lauren Mitchell had dreamt of for months. After countless late nights in Washington, D.C., managing the intense pressures of her role as a senator while raising her 2 children alone, a vacation felt like a lifeline. Lauren reclined on a lounge chair, her iced tea sweating in the heat. She watched Max and Katie splash in the pool, their laughter a melody she hadn't heard in too long. She treasured these moments, seeing her kids carefree and happy. After losing her husband unexpectedly 5 years earlier, she had vowed to give Max and Katie as much normalcy as she could. Lauren closed her eyes, letting the sound of their joy and the gentle rustle of palm trees soothe her spirit. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. A shadow falls. Her peace was interrupted by the crunch of footsteps on the poolside tiles. She opened her eyes to find 2 police officers, Officer William and Officer David, standing over her with expressions that made her skin prickle. "Ma'am," William said, his voice clipped. "What are you doing here?" Lauren blinked, confused. "Excuse me." "I said," William repeated, more firmly. "What are you doing here? Are you staying at this hotel?" Lauren sat up straighter. "Yes, I am. Is there a problem?" David glanced at the kids in the pool. His lip curled in a way that turned Lauren's stomach. "This pool is for hotel guests only," he said. "We'll need to see some ID." Lauren's heart sank. She knew exactly what this was. She'd faced it before. Subtle accusations, quiet prejudices that people thought would go unnoticed. But this wasn't subtle. "I'm staying in room 512, she said, keeping her tone calm but firm. "My name is Lauren Mitchell. Check your records." David snorted. "We'll see about that." Katie, who had swum closer, whispered, "Mom, are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart," Lauren said, stroking her daughter's damp hair. "Everything's fine." The weight of judgment. Minutes passed as Officer David called for verification. A crowd began to gather, their murmurs and pointed stares pressing in on Lauren like a weight. She hated being in the spotlight like this, especially in front of her children. Max, ever bold, stepped forward. "Why are you asking us all these questions? We didn't do anything wrong." "Just following procedure," William said. "Procedure for what?" Max shot back. Lauren placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "Max, it's okay." But it wasn't okay. Not even close. David returned with a smug grin. "Room 512, huh? Well, there's no record of you in that room. Looks like you're trespassing." Lauren stood, her calm exterior starting to crack. "That's impossible. I checked in yesterday." "You're mistaken." David crossed his arms. "No mistake. Pack your things and leave, or we'll have to escort you off the property." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, and Lauren's face burned with a mix of anger and humiliation. "You're doing this because of how I look, aren't you?" she said, her voice rising. "Is this how you treat all your guests?" William stepped closer, his face hardening. "Watch your tone, Liddy. We're the law here." Intervention. Before Lauren could respond, a voice rang out. "What's going on here?" The hotel manager, Mr. Daniels, hurried over, his brow furrowed. "These people aren't guests," David said quickly. "We've confirmed it." "That's not true," Lauren said, meeting Daniels' eyes. "I've been here since yesterday." "Check your records again." Daniels hesitated. I'll check right away." William scoffed. "No need. We've already—" "I said I'll check," Daniels interrupted. The tension was palpable as the manager disappeared into the lobby. Lauren stood her ground, one arm around Katie and the other holding Max's hand. She wasn't leaving. Not like this. Daniels returned moments later, his face pale. "There's been a mistake," he said, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Mitchell is a guest here. I deeply apologize for this misunderstanding." David's smug grin vanished, and William's jaw clenched. "Wait," William said, his eyes narrowing. Mitchell. As in Senator Lauren Mitchell. Lauren crossed her arms. That's right. The officers' faces turned ashen. They exchanged panicked glances, suddenly aware of the gravity of their actions. Rising above. You'll both be hearing from my lawyer, Lauren said, her voice steady and resolute. The crowd erupted in whispers, their phones still recording. The officers mumbled hurried apologies before retreating. Lauren turned to her children. Let's go, sweethearts. Our vacation isn't over yet. As they walked away, Lauren felt a surge of pride, not for exposing the officers or even for standing her ground, but for showing Max and Katie what dignity and resilience looked like. Later that evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Max leaned against her. Mom, you were so brave today. Lauren smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. Sometimes, Max, we have to be brave even when we don't want to be. And when we stand up for what's right, we make the world a little better. The incident made headlines, sparking a national conversation about prejudice and accountability. But for Lauren, the real victory was in the lesson she'd imparted to her children. That strength lies in standing tall, no matter the odds, and that justice begins with courage. This narrative weaves inspiration and resilience while addressing important themes. It aims to uplift and empower without provoking offense, emphasizing grace and determination in the face of adversity. The calm before the storm. Lauren Mitchell leaned back in her lounge chair, letting the gentle rustling of palm trees and the joyful laughter of her children fill her ears. The sunlight filtered through her sunglasses, casting a warm glow over the tranquil poolside scene. For the first time in what felt like years, she allowed herself to relax fully. Her world in Washington, D.C., was a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and public appearances. Lauren had always been meticulous about her responsibilities as a senator, a career she pursued not for recognition, but to make meaningful change. Still, she often felt the weight of balancing her demanding career with being a single mother to Max and Katie after losing her husband. This vacation had been a deliberate choice, a moment to breathe, reconnect with her children, and most importantly, remind herself of the joys that life still held. She smiled as she watched Max daring Katie to race him across the pool, her daughter's giggles floating through the air. As Lauren sipped her iced tea, a shadow fell across her. She glanced up, expecting to see a waiter or another guest, but instead, her gaze met two uniformed police officers. They stood rigid, their hands resting on their belts, and their expressions were a blend of suspicion and authority. Lauren's instinct told her something wasn't right. She straightened her posture, setting her glass down as her eyes flicked to her children, who were still blissfully unaware of the situation. "Ma'am," one officer, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a name tag that read William, said curtly, "What are you doing here?" The question caught Lauren off guard. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "You heard me," William replied, crossing his arms. "Are you a guest at this hotel?" Lauren blinked, confused by his confrontational tone. "Yes, I am." "Is there a problem?" The second officer, whose name tag read David, glanced toward the pool where Max and Katie were splashing. His eyes lingered on them longer than necessary, and something about his expression sent a chill through Lauren. "This pool is for hotel guests only," David said, his voice tinged with something Lauren couldn't quite place. "We'll need to see some identification to verify you belong here." For a moment, Lauren didn't respond. The sheer absurdity of the situation left her momentarily speechless. Her mind raced, trying to understand how sitting by the pool with her kids had warranted this scrutiny. "You're asking me for ID because I'm sitting by the pool," she finally said, her tone steady, but with an edge of disbelief. "Yes, ma'am," William said, "and we'll need to verify the kids too." Lauren's stomach twisted as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't about her room or any legitimate concern. This was about her, about how she looked, and the assumptions these officers had made. "My name is Lauren Mitchell," she said, keeping her voice level. "I'm staying in room 512. I checked in yesterday. If you'd like to confirm that, I suggest you speak to the front desk." William didn't budge. "We'll need to verify that ourselves." By now, Max and Katie had noticed the officers and were swimming toward her. Lauren could see the confusion and apprehension in their young faces. Katie, always the more sensitive of the two, clung to the pool's edge, her wide eyes fixed on her mother. "Mom," she whispered, "did we do something wrong?" Lauren reached out, gently stroking her daughter's hair. "No, sweetheart," she said softly. "We didn't do anything wrong." Max, who had a fiery streak and wasn't one to shy away from confrontation, stepped up beside his mother. "Why are you asking us all these questions?" he demanded, his voice clear and unwavering. "We didn't do anything." Lauren's heart swelled with pride at her son's courage, but she knew this wasn't the moment for him to take on the fight. She placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Max, it's okay," she said, though the words felt hollow. David smirked, pulling out his radio. "Let's see what the front desk has to say." As he relayed Lauren's room number and name, a small crowd began to gather around the pool area. Guests whispered among themselves, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding scene. Some pulled out their phones, recording the interaction. Lauren could feel the weight of their gazes. She wasn't sure if they were watching out of sympathy or judgment. But either way, it made her feel exposed. She had spent years in the public eye. But this was different. This was personal. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the officers waited for a response on the radio. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Lauren's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she forced herself to remain calm. When David's radio finally crackled to life, his smug grin widened. "Room 512, huh? Well, there's no record of a Lauren Mitchell in that room. Care to explain?" Lauren's heart skipped a beat. "That's impossible," she said, her voice firm but tinged with frustration. "I checked in yesterday. You must have made a mistake." David shrugged, his grin never faltering. "No mistake. If you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to escort you off the premises." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Lauren could feel her children's eyes on her, their fear and confusion palpable. She straightened her back, drawing on every ounce of strength she had. "You're wrong," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "And I'm not going anywhere." This sets the stage for the pivotal conflict, highlighting Lauren's inner strength and the emotional stakes for her and her children. Let me know if you'd like to continue or adjust any elements. A test of resolve. The murmurs of the onlookers around the pool grew louder as Lauren Mitchell stood her ground, the sun glinting off the water behind her like a silent witness to the unfolding confrontation. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her face calm, her posture steady. Years in politics had taught her how to maintain composure under pressure, but this was different. This wasn't about debates or policies. This was personal. Max, standing defiantly beside her, clenched his fists, his young face set in determination. Katie clung to Lauren's hand, her small fingers gripping tightly as though anchoring herself to her mother's strength. Lauren's focus shifted briefly to them, her children, her entire world. She had worked tirelessly to give them a life of safety, love, and opportunity, and she wouldn't let this moment shatter their sense of security. "I've already told you," Lauren said firmly, her voice carrying a quiet authority that made some in the crowd lean closer. "I'm staying in room 512. I checked in yesterday. Your records are wrong." Officer David raised an eyebrow, his grin smug and unrelenting. "The records don't lie, Mom," he said. "If you can't provide proof, we'll have no choice but to escort you and your children off the property. Rules are rules." Lauren's jaw tightened. She glanced around, seeing the mixture of curiosity, discomfort, and disapproval in the faces of the onlookers. Some guests exchanged whispers, while others pulled out their phones, recording the interaction. A few appeared sympathetic, but no one stepped forward to intervene. "Mom, why are they saying we don't belong here?" Katie whispered, her voice trembling. Lauren crouched down, bringing herself to her daughter's eye level. "Because sometimes," she said softly, "people make mistakes about who others are. But we know the truth, and we're not going to let anyone treat us unfairly, okay?" Katie nodded, her wide eyes searching her mother's face for reassurance. Standing back up, Lauren turned her gaze to the officers. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice steely. "And I assure you, you'll regret it." Officer William, who had been largely silent, stepped closer, his expression hardening. "Watch your tone, lady," he said, his voice low and threatening. "We're trying to do our job here. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Lauren squared her shoulders, her calm exterior masking the fury bubbling beneath the surface. "Your job," she said, enunciating each word deliberately, "is to serve and protect, not to intimidate and harass law-abiding citizens. You've already embarrassed yourselves enough. Let's not make this worse." The crowd murmured louder at her words, and William's face darkened. "That's it," he said, stepping forward. "You're coming with us." Before Lauren could respond, Max stepped between her and the officer. "Leave my mom alone," he shouted, his voice breaking with emotion. "Max," Lauren said quickly, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. I've got this." William grabbed Lauren's arm, his grip firm. "You're resisting a lawful order," he said, his tone sharp. Lauren didn't flinch. "Let go of me," she said calmly, her voice cutting through the tense silence like a blade. "I have done nothing wrong, and you have no right to treat me this way." The air was thick with tension when a new voice broke through the crowd. "What's going on here?" The hotel manager, Mr. Daniels, appeared, his face flushed as he pushed his way to the front. His eyes darted between the officers and Lauren, his confusion evident. "These people are trespassing," David said quickly, his smug expression faltering slightly under Daniel's scrutiny. "We've confirmed they aren't guests." "That's a lie," Lauren interjected, locking eyes with Daniels. "I checked in yesterday. Room 512. My name is Lauren Mitchell." Daniels hesitated, his gaze shifting between Lauren and the officers. I'll check the records right now," he stammered. "There's no need," William said gruffly. "We've already confirmed." "I said I'll check," Daniels interrupted, his tone firm. As Daniels hurried off toward the lobby, an uneasy silence fell over the pool area. Lauren stood tall, her children close beside her, while the officers exchanged nervous glances. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, and the weight of their stares pressed down on the officers like a physical force. Minutes later, Daniels returned, his face pale. He held a clipboard in one hand, his other hand nervously adjusting his tie. "There's been a mistake," he said, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Mitchell is indeed a guest here. She checked in yesterday, just as she said." The murmurs turned to gasps, and the crowd's mood shifted. Phones were raised higher, capturing the officers' stunned expressions. David's smug grin vanished, replaced by a look of disbelief. William released Lauren's arm as if her skin had burned him. "Wait," William said, his voice faltering. "Mitchell." As in Senator Lauren Mitchell. Lauren crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "That's correct." Realization dawned on the officers' faces, and their confident postures crumbled. The whispers among the crowd grew louder, some muttering in disbelief while others began calling out the officers' behavior. "I'll be filing a formal complaint," Lauren said, her voice calm but firm. "And you can expect to hear from my legal team." The officers stammered apologies, their faces pale as they quickly retreated. As the crowd dispersed, Lauren turned to Max and Katie, her expression softening. "Let's go, sweethearts," she said, her voice gentle. "Our vacation isn't over yet." Her children nodded, their admiration for their mother evident in their eyes. As they walked away, Lauren felt a quiet pride. She had stood her ground, not just for herself, but for her children and anyone else who had ever been unfairly judged. The storm had passed, and the sun shone brighter than ever. Rising from the ashes, The hotel lobby was bustling when Lauren Mitchell walked through its grand doors, her children on either side. The air conditioning sent a shiver down her spine, a sharp contrast to the heat of the confrontation she had just endured. Behind her, murmurs from the crowd still lingered by the pool, their whispers mixing with the distant sound of ocean waves. Lauren's mind raced, not with doubt, but with a clear sense of purpose. She had been wronged, her dignity called into question, and her children exposed to an experience she had spent years shielding them from. But she knew what needed to be done. She wouldn't let this moment define her family's vacation, or their memory of standing tall against injustice. "Mom, are we really okay to stay here?" Katie asked quietly, her voice tinged with lingering fear. Lauren paused and knelt down to her daughter's level. "Sweetheart, we're more than okay," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "This is our vacation, and no one, not those officers, not anyone, has the right to take that from us. Do you understand?" Katie nodded, though she still clung tightly to her mother's arm. Max, standing close by, spoke up. "That was messed up, Mom. They didn't even care what you said. They just decided we didn't belong." Lauren stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're right, Max. And that's why we have to show them, and the world, that no one gets to treat people like that. But we'll do it the right way, with grace and strength. That's how real change happens." As they made their way to the front desk, the manager, Mr. Daniels, rushed to meet them, his face still pale, and his hands wringing nervously. "Mrs. Mitchell, I can't express how sorry I am for what just happened," he stammered. "I had no idea. I mean, those officers acted entirely on their own. This is not how we treat our guests. Please, let me make this right." Lauren's gaze was steady as she looked at the man. "Mr. Daniels, what happened out there was unacceptable, and it goes far beyond just me and my family. This isn't just about correcting a mistake. It's about addressing a deeper issue. I expect accountability, not just apologies." Daniels swallowed hard, nodding. "Absolutely. I'll ensure those officers are reported, and I'll personally oversee that something like this never happens again at our hotel." "Good," Lauren said, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "Now I'd like to return to my room with my children, and I trust there won't be any further interruptions." "Of course," Daniel said quickly, gesturing to a bellhop to assist them. "Please let us know if there's anything else we can do to make your stay more comfortable." Lauren nodded curtly and led her children to the elevator. The doors slid shut, and as they ascended to their floor, a brief silence filled the space. "Mom," Max finally said. "Yes, honey. You didn't back down, even when they were being so mean. I don't think I could have done that." Lauren turned to him, her eyes softening. "Max, bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about standing up for what's right, even when you are scared. You and Katie need to remember that. No matter how tough things get, you have a voice, and you deserve to be heard." Max nodded, his chest puffing out slightly with pride. Katie, still holding Lauren's hand, asked, "Will the officers get in trouble?" Lauren hesitated before answering. "I don't know, Katie, but I'll make sure their actions are known. What they did was wrong, and when people do wrong, they have to face the consequences. That's how we make things better, for us, and for everyone else they might treat unfairly in the future." The elevator chimed, and the doors opened to their floor. As they walked toward their room, Lauren felt the weight of the day pressing on her, but she refused to let it break her. That evening, reflection and action. Later that night, as the sky turned a deep indigo and the stars began to twinkle over Miami Beach, Lauren sat on the balcony of their room. The ocean waves provided a soothing rhythm, and the breeze carried the faint scent of salt and flowers. Max and Katie had finally fallen asleep after an exhausting day, their laughter from playing board games filling the room earlier now replaced with the gentle sound of their breathing. Lauren opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She thought back to the looks on the officers' faces when they realized who she was. The shock, the regret, but also the clear understanding that they had misjudged her. It wasn't the first time she'd faced discrimination, but it was the first time her children had witnessed it so plainly. This moment was an opportunity, she realized, not just to fight back for herself, but to shine a light on the biases that still existed in every corner of society. She began typing, crafting a detailed letter to the hotel chain's headquarters and the local police department. She recounted every detail of the encounter, not with anger, but with purpose. Her words were measured and powerful, calling for better training, accountability, and a commitment to fairness. When she finished, she reread the letter, satisfied with its clarity and strength. She hit send, feeling a sense of closure. A brighter tomorrow. The next morning, the hotel's management had left a heartfelt letter of apology in their suite, along with a generous offer to extend their stay at no charge. But for Lauren, the true victory wasn't in the free accommodations or the written apologies. It was in the way her children had learned to face adversity with courage and dignity. As they headed out to the beach that day, Katie ran ahead, her laughter floating back to her mother like a melody. Max walked beside Lauren, his hand brushing hers. "Mom," he said, his voice thoughtful, "you always say people in power have a responsibility to help others. I think you did that yesterday." Lauren smiled, looking out at the horizon where the ocean met the sky. "That's the goal, Max. That's always the goal." She knew the story wasn't over. There would be follow-ups, media attention, and conversations about the incident. But for now, she was content knowing that she had planted a seed, not just in her children's hearts, but in the world around them. And with enough care and courage, that seed would grow into something remarkable. The ripple effect. News of the incident spread like wildfire. By the time Lauren and her children returned to Washington, D.C., the story had already made its way onto social media and news platforms. Videos recorded by the poolside witnesses captured the confrontation in stark clarity. Lauren standing tall, her children by her side, as she calmly yet firmly refused to be intimidated by the officers. The footage quickly garnered attention, with headlines such as, "Senator Stands Ground Against Bias, A Lesson in Grace Under Pressure," "Mother and Leader." Lauren Mitchell's courageous poolside encounter sparks national conversation. For Lauren, the attention was bittersweet. On the one hand, she was grateful that the incident was bringing to light the deep-seated issues of implicit bias and systemic inequities. On the other, she worried about how the publicity might affect her children. She had spent years shielding them from the harsh realities of her world, and now they were thrust into it headfirst. The conversation begins. Just days after returning home, Lauren received a formal apology from the Miami Police Department and the hotel chain's corporate office. Both organizations promised thorough investigations and pledged to implement changes. While the gestures were welcome, Lauren wasn't satisfied with mere words. She called a press conference on the steps of the Capitol, the same steps where she had championed countless bills for equality, education, and community reform. This time, though, her message was personal. "My family and I experienced an incident that no one should have to endure," she began, her voice steady but passionate. "What happened to us isn't unique. It's a reflection of deeper problems that affect countless people every day. People who don't have the platform or visibility to fight back." Her words resonated, striking a chord with those who had faced similar injustices. She outlined actionable steps, advocating for mandatory bias training for law enforcement and service industries, increased community engagement programs, and stronger accountability measures for officers who abuse their authority. "We can't just talk about equality," she said, looking directly into the cameras. "We have to live it, practice it, and enforce it in every aspect of our society." The crowd erupted in applause. Her children, standing behind her, clapped along, their faces glowing with pride. The personal touch. At home, Lauren made it a point to talk openly with Max and Katie about what had happened. She wanted them to understand that while the world could be unfair, they had the power to make it better. "Mom, do you think those officers feel bad now?" Katie asked one evening as they sat in the living room, the glow of the fireplace casting warm shadows on the walls. Lauren thought for a moment. "I think they probably do," she said. "But feeling bad isn't enough. What matters is whether they take that feeling and use it to change. That's what we should hope for, not just for them, but for everyone." Max, ever curious, asked, "Do you think things will really change because of this?" Lauren smiled at her son, marveling at how much he resembled his father in moments like these. "Change doesn't happen all at once," she said. "It's like planting a garden. You have to start with seeds, water them, and take care of them. This is just one seed, Max. But if enough people plant their own, imagine the forest we could grow." The broader impact. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of Lauren's story continued to grow. Community leaders, activists, and even celebrities joined the conversation, using their platforms to amplify her call for justice and equity. Schools began incorporating lessons on implicit bias into their curricula. Police departments across the country announced new training initiatives aimed at rebuilding trust within communities. Lauren's office was flooded with letters and emails, many from parents who shared similar stories of being unfairly judged while trying to create happy memories for their families. One letter stood out to her, a handwritten note from a young girl in Texas. "Dear Senator Mitchell," it read, "I saw what happened to you and your kids on the news. My mom and I went through something like that once, and I remember feeling so scared. But seeing you stand up to them made me feel brave, like maybe I can do that too someday. Thank you for showing me how to be strong." Lauren held the letter to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. This, she realized, was why she had chosen this path. It wasn't just about passing laws or giving speeches. It was about inspiring others to believe in their own strength. A new legacy. Months later, Lauren received an invitation to speak at a national conference on justice and equity. She brought Max and Katie along, wanting them to see firsthand the impact of their family's story. On stage, Lauren spoke not just as a senator, but as a mother, a widow, and a woman who had faced the sting of prejudice and refused to let it define her. "We are all part of the solution," she said, her voice echoing through the packed auditorium. "Every time we stand up for what's right, every time we speak out against injustice, we're planting a seed. And those seeds, if nurtured, can grow into something powerful, a world where everyone is valued, respected, and free to be who they are." The audience rose to their feet, the applause thunderous. Backstage, Max and Katie ran to her, wrapping their arms around her in a tight hug. "Mom," Max said, his voice full of admiration, "you're awesome." Lauren laughed, pulling them closer. "No, sweetheart," she said, her eyes shining. "We're awesome. This is our story, our fight. And we're just getting started." And as they walked out into the world together, Lauren felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew they were ready to face it. One step, one seed, one victory at a time. Building bridges, not walls. Months passed, and the incident in Miami became a pivotal moment in Lauren Mitchell's life and career. The ripples of her defiance and grace extended far beyond the poolside confrontation, turning into waves of meaningful change. But Lauren knew that creating a better world wasn't just about reacting to moments of injustice. It was about actively building a foundation for lasting progress. One brisk autumn morning, Lauren sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by her children's homework, mugs of coffee, and stacks of legal documents. The soft hum of life in their home was comforting, but her thoughts were fixed on the work ahead. The letters and calls she had received from people across the country still weighed heavily on her mind. Stories of similar encounters flooded her inbox. Parents pulled over for looking out of place. Children followed in stores. Families questioned for simply existing in spaces they had every right to be. Lauren had already introduced a proposal for a comprehensive national initiative on bias training and community police relations, but she wanted to do more. She wanted this to be about more than policies. It had to be about people. A community summit. Lauren decided to host a nationwide summit, bringing together policymakers, law enforcement, activists, educators, and community members to discuss real solutions. She envisioned an event that would serve as a turning point, a space where dialogue replaced division and action followed understanding. "Max, Katie," she said over dinner one evening, "I need your help with something." Her children, now more attuned to their mother's work than ever, looked at her with curiosity. "I'm planning a big event," Lauren explained. "It's going to bring people together to talk about how we can make sure what happened to us doesn't keep happening to others. I want you both to be involved because this isn't just about adults. It's about your future too." Katie's eyes lit up. "Can I help with decorations?" she asked. "Of course," Lauren said with a smile. "And Max, maybe you could help me think of some questions we should ask the police officers and leaders who come." Max nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, but can I ask tough questions?" Lauren laughed. "Absolutely. The tougher, the better." The day of the summit. The summit, held in Washington, D.C., was a monumental event. The venue was a sprawling community center adorned with banners that read "Building Bridges," a national conversation on equity and justice. Lauren stood backstage, looking out at the crowd gathering in the main hall. Thousands of people had shown up, families, students, civic leaders, and law enforcement officers from all over the country. There were booths lining the walls offering resources, workshops on conflict resolution, and stations where attendees could share their own stories. Katie had outdone herself with the decorations, filling the space with vibrant colors and symbols of unity. Max stood beside Lauren, a clipboard in hand, ready to play his role as a youth moderator during one of the panels. When it was time for Lauren to take the stage, she felt a swell of emotion as she looked out at the audience. Each face represented a story, a struggle, and a hope for something better. "Good morning," she began, her voice strong and clear. "We are here today because we believe in a simple but powerful truth. No one should ever feel unwelcome, unsafe, or unseen because of who they are." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But belief alone isn't enough. If we want to create a world where dignity and justice are the standard, we have to do the hard work. We have to listen to each other, challenge our own biases, and commit to action. That's why we're here, to build bridges, not walls." The audience erupted into applause. Conversations that matter. Throughout the day, the summit buzzed with energy. Police officers sat in circles with community members, engaging in candid conversations about their experiences and the changes needed to rebuild trust. Panels featuring experts and activists tackled tough topics, from systemic racism to the role of education in fostering empathy. Max's panel was one of the highlights of the day. The audience listened intently as he and other young people shared their perspectives on what it felt like to grow up in a world where prejudice still lingered. His voice wavered only slightly as he asked a police chief, "How can kids like me trust officers when we see stories of people being treated unfairly? How will you change that?" The chief, to his credit, didn't deflect. "You're right to ask that," he said. "And the truth is, it's up to us in law enforcement to earn that trust. It starts with accountability and with showing you, not just telling you, that we're here to protect everyone, no matter who they are." The audience broke into applause, and Max glanced at his mother, who nodded proudly. A moment of connection. As the summit drew to a close, Lauren took the stage one final time. "Today was just the beginning," she said, her voice filled with hope. "The conversations we started here need to continue in every city, every school, every home. Change isn't a one-time event. It's a lifetime commitment. And together, we can make it happen." She looked down at Max and Katie in the front row, their faces glowing with pride. This wasn't just her fight. It was theirs too, and she was determined to leave them a world better than the one she had inherited. The path forward. In the weeks following the summit, Lauren worked tirelessly to ensure the momentum didn't fade. The event inspired a national task force focused on implementing the ideas discussed, from mandatory bias training to the creation of civilian oversight boards for law enforcement. Lauren also made time to continue the personal work of raising her children with strength and compassion. She encouraged them to ask questions, challenge unfairness, and believe in their ability to create change. One evening, as the family sat on the porch watching the sunset, Katie asked, "Mom, do you think everything will really get better someday?" Lauren wrapped an arm around her daughter and smiled. "I do, Katie, but not because it will happen on its own. It'll get better because people like you and Max will make it better." The horizon glowed with the colors of twilight, and Lauren felt a deep sense of peace. The journey was far from over, but with every step forward, she was confident they were heading toward a brighter future. The legacy of courage. Months turned into years, and Lauren Mitchell's efforts to create change became a defining chapter of her career. The summit had not only sparked national conversations, but had also led to real, measurable progress. Communities across the country began to adopt policies aimed at fostering equity, accountability, and understanding. Police departments partnered with local organizations to rebuild trust, and schools started teaching students about empathy and bias from a young age. For Lauren, the work was deeply personal. Every step she took to promote justice reminded her of the poolside incident in Miami, the moment when she could have stayed silent but chose to stand tall instead. She often thought of her children, Max and Katie, and how that moment had shaped them. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Katie looked up from her sketchpad. "Mom, do you ever wish the Miami thing didn't happen?" Lauren paused, thinking carefully. "That's a good question, Katie," she said, leaning forward. "If I could protect you and Max from that kind of experience, I would. But sometimes, the hard moments in life teach us the most important lessons. If that hadn't happened, we might not have had the chance to stand up for ourselves and for others. And look at all the good that's come from it." Max, now a teenager with a budding interest in social justice, chimed in. "It's like you always say, Mom. One person standing up can inspire a whole crowd to stand with them." Lauren smiled. "Exactly. And both of you stood with me that day. I'll never forget that." Carrying the torch. Years later, Max and Katie would continue their mother's legacy in their own ways. Max pursued a career in law, dedicating himself to advocating for underrepresented communities. Katie became an artist, using her work to highlight themes of unity, resilience, and justice. Both of them carried the lessons they had learned from that pivotal moment, using their voices and talents to make the world better. As for Lauren, her legacy as a senator and a mother was cemented in the hearts of those she touched. She didn't just talk about change. She lived it, modeling grace, courage, and persistence for her children and the nation. The lesson of the story. The story of Lauren Mitchell and her family serves as a reminder that moments of adversity, no matter how challenging, can be powerful catalysts for change. It teaches us that standing up against injustice is never easy, but it is always necessary. Lauren's strength inspired her children to be courageous, and her determination sparked a national movement that proved one person's voice can resonate far beyond their own experience. The ultimate lesson is this: while the world may not always be fair, we have the power to shape it into something better. Through compassion, resilience, and action, we can build bridges that bring people together, leaving a legacy of hope and justice for future generations. And that, more than anything, is the true measure of courage. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.